I didn't know what was going to happen. I was so nervous. Now that actually reminds me, I would say the biggest plot twist in this book was finding out. I was like, oh my god, please no. I was on the edge of my seat. Out of all of the things, did not expect that one at all. Did not see that coming. Hi friends, my name is Kimberly and welcome to Currently Reading with Kimberly. Today we are going to be talking about Queen of Shadows by Sarah J Maas. This is part of the Throne of Glass series, and if you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that I am currently going down the Sarah J Maas rabbit hole and I'm on the Throne of Glass series. I did complete the ACOTAR series. We're going to dedicate this review just to one book. We're only going to review Queen of Shadows because there is quite a bit that happens in this book. Also want to split up the reviews to the first half. We'll have a no spoiler review, and then the second half will be where I include the spoilers, and that's more of like a chit chat. Let's talk about what happened in the book. I will include timestamps in the description box below. If there are certain parts that you're more interested in than others, you want to skip ahead, then you can do so. Or if you don't want spoilers, you'll know exactly where you need to be and where you need to stop the video. Let's get into the no spoiler review of Queen of Shadows. I gave it a 5 out of 5 because I really did enjoy this book. There's a lot that happens with the main characters and some of the new characters that we met in Heir of Fire. It's way more interesting than Heir of Fire. You have a lot of action things happening. There's a lot of development with like the politics stuff. You do get a lot more romance in this book, at least between the main characters. I really enjoyed. That really kept me reading. The biggest thing that I struggled with in this book was not being able to read through the different POVs. For me, I was heavily invested in the main character's love story. I would find myself maybe get a couple chapters in that perspective, jump to another character's perspective and what's going on like in their life during this timeline that all of this is happening. I read the whole book. However, I would catch myself like skipping over some of those chapters so I could read the main character and like see if anything happened like with the love story part of the book. Not the best approach, but I couldn't resist it. Like I ended up staying, late at night, and then I'm left on a cliffhanger, so I'm like, I have to see what happens so I can go to sleep. Overall, the book was very easy to read. I found myself being able to follow along really well. I rarely got bored. It kept me really sucked in. There was a lot of stuff going on. I thought it was well paced personally. I thought it was way better paced than Heir of Fire. Overall, I think it was a really good book, especially coming off of Heir of Fire and being like, okay, like what's gonna happen next? Like this definitely delivered. I'm excited to see where we're gonna end up in the other books now, especially because this felt like a conclusion to an era for the main character. I'm curious to see what is gonna happen in these next books. It's weird because it feels like this is like the closing of a chapter, even though it's like a whole book, and that we're starting a new chapter with the new books, if that makes any sense. There are things though that happened in these books that there are a few things that will carry over into the next book, so it's not like a completely closed out era, I guess you could say. There are things that happened that will lead to like the next set of plot lines and storylines, if that makes sense. Of course, I would recommend this book. You have to read it if you're going to be reading the Throne of Glass series. I do plan to do the tandem read. I always get it confused of the next few books. It's Empire of Storms, then Tower of Dawn, but there are chapters that you can tandem read, so I do plan on doing that for that book. When I do that book review, I'll probably do those together just since I'm reading them together, and I think that makes the most sense. Now we are going to start the spoiler part of this review. If you don't want to hear any of the spoilers, I suggest you exit the video now. Now we're going to get into the spoiler review of Queen of Shadows. There's so much that happens in this book. I'm going to do my best to stay consecutive into the timeline of everything that happens. Curious to see what your guys' thoughts are going to be. Definitely leave me some comments below. Just make sure when you leave your comments, if it contains any spoilers, try to put that warning at the top of the comment. That way if there's anyone scrolling through, they know like, okay, this one has spoilers, and to kind of just skip over it. Actually really happy that Aelin, who Selena, but has now accepted her fate to be queen and to be Aelin and to own that identity and to own who she is. Really happy to see the relationship between her and Rowan really develop and really progress forward, especially romantically. This book is definitely not as spicy as the ACOTAR books. However, I think it still delivers if you're a romance person and you do like the subtle little hints of things, the hand touching, the glances, the getting into their perspectives and seeing how they think about the other person. We definitely get a lot of that in this book, a lot more than Heir of Fire. I think this book is way more interesting than Heir of Fire. I was very happy with what Sarah J Maas delivered in this book in terms of like the politics and the world building and the storylines of all the different characters that we met in Heir of Fire. There is a lot that happens in this book. I have so many opinions about all of it, but I don't forget anything. It's action packed. I'm on the edge of my seat. I really enjoyed this book so much. Where we left off with Heir of Fire, Selena, who's now Aelin, left Wendlin to go back to Rifthold. She does part with Rowan because she's nervous to have him go there with her, knowing that magic is banned. She just doesn't want to risk it. If she can keep him in Wendlin, he absolutely needs him, then she can send word for him, but she's just too scared to bring him back, and heaven forbid something happened to him, especially given the status of the king. In terms of where we start with this book, I was actually surprised, but also was wondering if Erebin was going to come back into the picture, and Sarah J Maas does bring him back. It's very interesting to see how that story unfolds. I personally was expecting him to have a character redemption arc. I was not expecting him to have ill intentions towards Aelin. Then again, we had so many little hints in the books that did have Erebin that he was very much a jealous person. He wanted Aelin all for himself. He was the type of guy that you don't touch my belongings, and that includes people. I get why he's bad. My light above just adjusted, so that's why I got brighter in here all of a sudden. I do get to see Aelin facing Chaol again, especially after the time that she's been gone, and they can kind of like catch up to see where each other are at in their lives. Chaol really irritates me in this book so much more than all of the other books. I wouldn't say so much more, like he definitely irritated me in Crown of Midnight and then also in this book. Even though at the end he does the things that we want him to do, I still just like, I can't be Team Chaol. I don't know, I just don't like him, don't really care for him, and I kind of just want him to go away at this point. He's just always so grumpy and so selfish, doesn't have the ability to see things from other perspectives, and he just thinks he's entitled to the information that Aelin has, and he's not. Like, he has not proven himself to be an ally, so why would she just tell you absolutely everything? Of course, she's only going to give you shreds and bits of information. Like, what do you expect? Especially after how you betrayed her. You literally got one of her best friends in the whole entire world killed. Like, she's going to keep you at an arm's length. Like, you need to get over yourself. His whole situation in this book I really didn't care about. Nesrin, I think is how you say it. It's the girl who essentially is like Chaol's love interest, but she's also one of the people that works for the king, and she's trying to be like a spy and helping the rebels to fight against the king and to try to get magic back in the realm, or I guess like in the area of the continent in Aderland, which is fine. Like, I thought the Nesrin thing was fine. I was happy that the way Sarah J Maas wrote her, I felt she was more of a girl's girl. She wasn't willing, like, just because Chaol had a bad experience or bad perception of Aelin, it didn't mean that Nesrin was going to. I think she treated Aelin the same as she would anyone else, kind of at arm's length, kind of suspicious. She wanted to see if, she could trust her. She kind of let that play out on its own, but she wasn't going to hold anything against Aelin. Like, if Aelin could prove that she was a good person and that she holds up to her word, then Nesrin was going to give her alliance, and she did. It was really nice to see that, to see Nesrin willing to even be friends with Aelin and Adian and Lysandra and Rowan, whereas Chaol was like, why is she like friends with them? Like, maybe because they're not bad people, I don't know. Just a thought. There is a lot more development with Manon Blackbeak's story and what's going on with the Iron Teeth witches in Morath, I think is how you say it. Also meet Alid. I can't remember if we met her in Heir of Fire or not. Guys, there's so much that happens in these books, so my brain's a little bit of mush, but I wanted to get this done before I start the next two books, especially since I'll be tandem reading those. So we get to meet a little bit more about Alid. My first thoughts of her is that I don't really like her. That's my first impression, only because she's such a shell of a human and she's such a little scaredy cat. But at the same time, would I act the same way she does in her situation given what's happened to her? Probably. So that's probably the only reason why I don't like her, is because I might even see some of myself in her that I don't like. Let me know how you felt about Alid. I was happy towards the end of the book. It does seem that she's willing and ready to start fighting back. She's accepted the fact that she can possibly have an impact on the future of Terrasen and the continent. So I was happy to see that development from her. In terms of Manon's development, I was so happy to see an ally for Aelin, for them to actually recognize that they're a lot more alike than they realize. I hope that in the next couple of books they will actually start to have a friendship. I don't know if they will. I think that would be really interesting to see because they are very, very similar. But I was happy that Manon decided to start to think for herself and not just obey her grandmother's orders and the orders of Duke Parrington. It's mostly due to Astrid being able to try to get Manon to open her eyes to what was actually going on. I was not expecting Astrid to have the type of past that she had actually fallen in love with a human, and that she had disobeyed orders, she had gotten pregnant, and that whole story with Manon's grandma and what happened with Astrid during that pregnancy, and that she was shamed and marked as unclean. Like, that was absolutely terrible. It does suck that it had to take Astrid sharing that story with Manon for Manon to wake up and start to question that maybe the things my grandmother's asking me to do aren't actually for my best interest and also the best interest of the people that I'm leading, of these witches, and that maybe we might not even get our end of the bargain. We might not even get to see the waste and to have that back in their ownership. The other thing I was really happy to see is when Manon takes a lead in, she decides, you know what, it's up to you, Elide, to decide if your blood runs red or if it runs blue. I really thought she was actually going to cut her. They were having that conversation. I really thought Manon was actually going to truly see if Elide did bleed red or blue. But it was really just a metaphorical question, is that if Elide wants to choose her alliance with the witches, then Manon will protect her the best that she can. Or if she wants to run away and try to get her own freedom, then she can go do that, but Manon can't promise like any protection for her whatsoever. I think that was the beginning of the crack in Manon's wall, so she could start to be more open to alternate ways of living, especially as an Iron Teeth witch. But Lysandra coming back, was not expecting that. Was not expecting her to come back at all, and I wasn't even expecting her to essentially have a girl that she's like adopted. I know she hasn't like actually adopted her, she's just taken her under her wing and like provides her protection and stuff. Was not expecting that at all. I think that was one of the best surprises of this book because of the benefits that the relationship Lysandra and Aelin ended up having in this book. I think saved Aelin. It saved a lot of them, especially at the end of the book. That alliance with Lysandra was one of the best things that could have happened for Aelin. I was not expecting Lysandra to be a shapeshifter. Out of all of the things, did not expect that one at all. Did not see that coming. I thought that was a nice mix because of all the other stuff we've heard, obviously, like witches and fae haven't had a shapeshifter in any of the books. I guess technically the fae when they shapeshift into their alternate forms, but it's not the same. I do wonder if Lysandra and Adian are going to get together. I feel like there's some hints at potential romance between the two of them, especially when Lysandra sees Rowan and Aelin after they win the major battle at the end of the book, and how much true love that they have for each other, and she says in front of Adian that she wants to have that one day. And I do wonder if that could happen for them, especially because Aelin does invite or gives land to Lysandra and offers her to be a lady of her court. So I'll be curious to see what happens the next couple of books. I am rooting for them. In terms of the situation with the Lorcain, we met him in Air of Fire. Aelin has a vendetta against Lorcain because he whipped his own cadre, is what she calls them. They're like pals. But Rowan has tried to drill into Aelin that they're not actually friends just because they've gone to battle before and they kind of check on each other doesn't necessarily mean that he sees them as like his buddies. I'm not really sure what's going to happen with him. During this book, he was kind of playing both sides of the field. We know that he has a blood oath to Maeve, just like Rowan did, but Aelin asked Maeve to relinquish that Rowan could be free, and then Rowan decided he wanted to give his blood oath to Aelin at that point once he was free. The Lorcain does have a blood oath, and apparently that works very similar, I would say, to almost like a mating bond, in the sense that like they can't betray the person that they swore a blood oath to. Everything that they do has to be in positive or in benefit to the person who they give their blood oath to. Lorcain, at least from what we know, he shouldn't ever just decide that he wants to kill Queen Maeve while under the blood oath, if that makes sense. Like his body and his mind would fight him on it. It does mention that with him meddling into what's going on in Rifthold, when he sees Aelin and Rowan and he tries to bargain with them with the gold ring to protect Aelin against potentially getting a collar or a black ring on her finger, for information on the word keys, and for even like the word key that they do have, because he wants to destroy them so Maeve doesn't become this evil, super evil, and all-powerful Dark Queen because he's looking out for her best interest. Like, that's how he was able to reason it in his head, so the blood oath wouldn't stop him from doing these things. However, he still does stuff, though, where he wants to hurt, like, Rowan and Aelin. When Aelin had sent him into the sewers where there were supposed to be, like, 8 different word hounds, Aelin's hope was that Lorcan, for how powerful he's supposed to be even more powerful than Aelin and I think Rowan, she was hoping that he would kill all of them. That way it clears the sewers for them, so that way when they go to sneak into the castle to blow up the tower from underneath, that the word hounds would be gone, so they wouldn't have to worry about it. And Lorcan decides to not do that and to actually give them Rowan's scent. And that's a whole situation. I just don't get why he wanted to kill Rowan. Like, that just wasn't really explained. Like, if he was willing to help out because Aedion was involved. I didn't even talk about this in the past review, so we find out. We don't have exact confirmation. We just have it, like, everyone just thinks and they put all the pieces together, and I guess that's our confirmation that Aedion, his real father, is this guy named Graviel, who is actually a part of the cadres, part of, like, Rowan's little group of powerful fays. Lorcan decides to kind of help for Aedion's own benefit because he doesn't want to be involved in the possible death of Aedion, especially because I guess he does like Graviel and he doesn't want to be responsible for killing his friend's son, essentially, especially before he finds out that that's his son, which is weird because it just doesn't make sense to me then why he was willing to hurt Rowan. I don't know. I think I might have missed something, but that part confused me, why it was okay to kill Rowan, but because Aedion was in the sewers during the time when they were gonna bomb the tower and the word hounds came out and almost killed them, Lorcan's like, oops, yeah, my bad. I don't know. It just doesn't really make too much sense to me. We're pretty much left with Lorcan. We don't know if he's good or bad at this point. We just know that he's playing both sides for the time being, that he doesn't like Aelin and Rowan, but he also doesn't want Queen Maeve to have all of the power and to actually become this really dark, super powerful queen. Curious to see what's going to happen with him. I did read a spoiler of who his romantic interest is. I think we're actually going to see that right away in the next book, so I'm excited to see how that works out. I'm actually really curious. I think they're polar opposites. I'll be curious to see if the person he ends up with softens him at all, or if this person that he ends up with, I think, could turn bad. Currently in this book, they're supposed to be good, but I have a feeling they could turn bad. There's just some hints. There's some hints. I don't want to give too much away because then you'll know who I'm talking about, and I feel like that's a spoiler for the next couple of books, but we'll talk about it when we get there, and I'll refer back to like the hints and stuff. Let's talk about Prince Dorian a little bit, and then we're gonna jump ahead to the end of the book just because I feel like I've kind of rambled a lot about some of the other stuff that's happened. Prince Dorian, I'm a little disappointed that he didn't fight back. I'm disappointed that we found out that Kaltain actually had a collar on her. She had a Valg Prince in her, and she was able to fight back and take control of her body and even get rid of the Valg Prince. But we did find out that she had real magic. She had magic called shadow fire magic. So it's also real, but it's also like shadow, like you can't see it, but it will like burn things. It'll burn something up even though you can't see it. And she has actual real fire. I mean, Dorian has ultimate power too. Like even Rowan says when he sees Dorian use his power that he's never seen anything like it before, that if Dorian doesn't learn how to control it, it could kill him, or it could literally like unleash itself onto the world. Like he just thinks like Dorian needs to get a hold of it, or it could be really bad. I think what we're going to see in the next couple of books is probably more insight to Dorian's mental. If he's going to be able to really step into being a king and how he's going to handle that and how he's going to overcome his own personal demons. I think that that's why he struggled when the Valg Prince was inside of him, because he had so many personal inner demons that the Valg Prince obviously feeds off of that and off of that fear, and it was able to essentially chain Dorian so Dorian couldn't take control. We did get a little insight into potentially romantic interest between Manon Blackbeak and Dorian, which I did not see that coming at all, especially with how flirty Dorian was. But then again, I did forget that when we first met Dorian, he was super flirty. He was very much a ladies' man. He was very good with his words. We kind of get a little bit more of a glimpse into that when he talks to Manon. She does come back to make sure that he's safe, and he does remember her. So I'm curious to see in the next couple of books if they do end up having a romantic history at all, or if it's just kind of like they know that they kind of have a thing for each other, but like that's it. Like I'm curious to see if it actually develops into something something more or not. Let's talk about Arobin. I know I told you guys I was hoping that, I wasn't even hoping because I think Arobin's a bad guy. I think it was really crappy that he killed Sam, that he sold Selena, at the time Selena, but now, you know, Aelin, to Andover for a slave. I think I was just expecting Arobin to have a redemption arc, but I didn't want that. So I'm glad that he did end up murdered by Lysandra. That was a plot twist because I really thought it was going to be Aelin, but I think it does make sense that it was Lysandra that did it. I mean, either one of them deserved it. They deserved to have the kill. I don't know if anyone else feels this way. I think it was fine how he died, but actually looking back, it might have been a little anticlimactic if you think about it. I think the reason why it happened the way it did is because the scene the night of when he invites them over so Aelin can drop off one of the Val Prince like commanders she captured, he wants them to stay and have dinner. I think the reason why we didn't get like a very dramatic death is because of how crazy that whole situation was. It just felt like Arobin, like we were able to see he is truly evil, that he does want complete control of Aelin, wants to use her in all sorts of really terrible ways. So I could see that being so bad that his death, Lysandra just simply like slit his throat and he choked on his own blood and died. I guess that is kind of like, when you say it out loud, you're like, that's pretty dramatic. But I think in terms of like some of the other stuff that happens, it didn't feel as climactic and dramatic, if that makes sense. I was really nervous when he put up the black ring onto her finger and was trying to command her. I thought that was really smart though, that Aelin thought to grab one of the Val commanders that seemed to have the least amount of brutality. Like she was able to pick out which one she figured she could get on their side, at least for the time that they needed when Arobin was questioning him. I do think Arobin gave up too easily on questioning him. Like that was kind of sus. He was like, all right, well, I guess he's no use with me. Go ahead and kill him. And I was just like, I don't know, he only asked him a couple questions and then he was like, okay, we can kill him. So that he put the black ring on Aelin, and so, but him thinking that that would allow him just to command her, to control her, like he really wasn't as smart as he thought he was. For whatever reason, when I read that part, I actually thought she was under his control and I was like, oh my god, please no. When they get back to the apartment, it's like, no, that was totally a ruse, it was totally fake, but it was super smart and I was like, oh, she got him good. And he died that night, which I didn't think he was going to die that night either. I think it worked out fine for the storyline and the way it all played out. I think it went really well. I think it was written really well. I don't have too much analysis for that. In terms of the final fight, it was very intense. It was on 10 plus chapters. Like it is a long fight. I was nervous. I didn't know if Rowan was going to make it out alive or Adian. I did see the spoiler though about what happened to Chaol, so I knew he was going to wake up paralyzed. Just didn't know to what extent. It is interesting though, because in the time that I read about Chaol's injury, I also did find out who he ends up with, so I'm curious to see how things unfold with his romantic. As much as I don't like him, I know we're going to get to see a little bit more into his romantic life. At the end of this book, he does kind of own the fact that he was wrong all along, that Aelin was right, he should have been there, he should have trusted her more. I do hope just be a better character, like it won't be as painful to read his chapters. The ending scene with the king was the ultimate what is happening, because I don't know if I believe him. I don't know if I believe that he was completely under the control of Duke Parrington and the demon that was inside of him, and that him disbanding magic was to look out for all of their best interests and to keep them safe and protected. He was just so brutal and so mean that if you compare him to other people that had a ring on their finger, they weren't to that extent. So to me, it just feels like, I don't know, dude. I don't know if I believe you. I'm curious to see if we'll find out if the king in fact was right and he was trying to, actual king was trying to do everything good to protect them, and that he really was just being controlled by a demon and under like Duke Parrington's order. That was like the biggest plot twist, is that Duke Parrington is the guy behind everything. He's the brains of the operation, and that the king was just his front guy. Did not see that coming at all. Did not expect that. I am curious to see what's going to happen. I know that he's going to be our villain, and so is Aunt Maeve, or Queen Maeve. She's going to be the villain, I think, for a little bit. I don't know how long, and I don't know. Like I said, I was really hoping she would try to become good, so at least Aelin would have someone from her family kind of like be there for her. Still hoping she'll have a redemption arc at least, and that we won't have to deal with her and the Duke at the same time. Don't know if we're going to get any other villains that are going to come into the story. We only have like 3 more books, right? We only have 3 more books, so I don't know. Last battle, like I said, it goes on for 10 chapters. A lot happens. I thought it went the best that it could. I was really happy that Dorian was able to wake up and not kill Aelin. I was surprised that he did end up killing his dad. I did think that was interesting. I didn't know if he was going to have it in him to do it, but I just think he had seen so much and been through much that he was just like done. His dad was done to him, even if it was in fact that he was a good guy. I am curious to see if we do find out if he was truly a good guy, how Dorian's gonna handle that, since it was him that killed his dad. I don't know if Dorian will care that much. I think he'll be a little saddened, but I don't think it's going to send him down a bad spiral or anything like that. I think he'll be able to accept the decision that he made. And I'm curious to see how he's going to be as king. I feel like Dorian walks a very fine line if he could be a really great king and a really great alliance for Aelin and the court of Terrasen, or I think he could go bad. I think there was so many references to his brother being like he would be the bad option as a king that I am worried it could in fact be Dorian, that Dorian could end up being a bad guy. I'm not sure though. I'm not sure how that's going to play out. I'm also curious to see if we're going to get more insight into his brother, like now that his brother's getting older and that Dorian's the king, what's going to happen with his younger brother? Are we even going to hear about him, or is he just going to be like kind of in the background, like we're not really going to have to worry about him? A lot of unknowns, but there are also a lot of things that were wrapped up in this book. It ended really well. It ended how I wanted it to end. I think we had best case scenario, and now I'm excited to read the next couple of books. That will be it for this review today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, let me know in the comments how you felt about some of the things. If you read Queen of Shadows, just make sure you put, if it does include any spoilers, just kind of warn it at the top of the comment. There was so much that happened in this book. I feel like I probably didn't even cover all of it. I tried to hit like the main points of the characters that I really liked and the characters that I didn't so much like, and some of the crazy things that happened. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to be friends, not miss any of my future videos to come, and I'll see you in the next one.